Thanks for joining us. This is our extended interview with Chad Burton, the CEO at CuroLegal. The first part of this video is from our GNGF Live, which happens every other Wednesday on our Facebook page. The second part here is this bonus extended interview where we dive into things like what practice areas will need to change the way they operate, among other things. If you already saw the live, I'll put the timestamp to the exclusive extended interview below. And be sure to like and subscribe to follow along with all of our great conversations on legal marketing and the business side of running a law firm. And to watch this video on your platform of choice, you can find every role we stream at GNGF.tv. Welcome to GNGF Live, your bi-weekly Ask the Experts about all things law firm marketing and business growth. I'm Mark Homer, author of Online Law Practice Strategies and founder of Get Noticed, Get Found. On this show, we focus on the business side of growing and running your law firm. So I'm excited to have today's guest, Chad Burton of CuroLegal. Chad helps law firms, bar associations, law schools, and more innovate using strategy, design thinking, and technology. As always, be sure to like and subscribe to our page, not just the video, so you can get updated when our next episode goes live. Of course, it never hurts for you to show a little love and crush that like button on the video too. It really helps us with the Facebook and YouTube algorithms. We've got moderators in the chat, so please question and interact during the premiere. And if you're watching this in the future after we've premiered, we do monitor comments on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn, and we'll work to reach out to our guests and answer any follow-up questions you have. That's because we love you all, and we love getting to meet you online and in person. So you can find a list of all of our upcoming webinars and events where we're going to be speaking at gngf.com/events. And on weeks when we're not premiering an interview, we drop a video as part of our GNGF Tips series, and these are in-depth videos focusing on one topic at a time. Check it out on our YouTube page or by heading to gngf.tv. You can watch our latest video, well, after this interview, of course, at that link in the chat. Check them out. Like I said, we drop a new GNGF Tips video every other Friday. Okay, let's get to the interview. Chad, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Awesome. So before we get started, tell everybody a little bit about yourself, what you've been up to in CuroLegal and things going on lately.
Yeah, just like everyone else, weathering the pandemic world and figuring out what the future of law firms look like. And at Curo and Modern Law Practice, we're working with organizations around the country to optimize businesses and tech, intake, all things that are relevant to running strong small law firms.
Awesome. So you're out there talking to a lot of law firms, and I mean, also like you work with bar associations, and so you're all over the legal industry. How do you see law firms evolving in light of, or how are you seeing them already starting to evolve in light of the pandemic?
I mean, we've seen over the past couple of months a lot of forced change, and I think Jack Newton, from CEO of Clio, I'm going to butcher his quote, but he came up with something that basically we've had 5 to 10 years of change occur in 5 to 10 days, effectively, because when back in March, when the world was shutting down, firms of all shapes and sizes are trying to figure out what does it mean to work remote, and so things and issues that firms have struggled with for years with technology or remote work all just were forced upon everyone. And I think with the exception, obviously there are some struggles, and oftentimes individuals who are not used to working remote have struggled in some ways, but I think most firms have found that remote work isn't as scary and evil as it sounds, because once you're forced into something and realize that you can really function from anywhere with minimal effort, if you have the right systems and processes in place, then it's not a bad thing. So people were forced to move quickly, and I think most firms adapted quickly.
Yeah, I think I saw like the same quote you saw from Jack. So Clio, I think Zoom, Slack, they all said that they had these like a 5-year projection on user growth and stuff like that, and it all happened within like a month. So it was like just a massive change really fast. But you're saying like people are adapting. You're seeing law firms actually kind of saying, oh, this isn't bad. In fact, I think I see a study recently that a lot of the people that work at law firms were kind of saying, hey, we actually kind of maybe prefer working from home instead of going back to an office. So that was interesting.
Right. I mean, I know folks who are ditching at least some of their office space, maybe not all of it, but changing the way going forward things are going to work. Some had been contemplating it for a period of time, and this just helps push them over the edge. So I think we're still early enough in the overall crisis that I don't think everybody knows exactly what it's going to look like coming out. And I mean, I know that I've cut back my Apple News reading of the end of the world articles at this point, but I still read enough that we're supposed to see ebbs and flows of when the pandemic kind of causes more issues. So we're going to have more times when people have to work at home, perhaps maybe next fall and winter. And if that occurs, people will be much more prepared, but they're also thinking ahead of what if this keeps perpetuating, and what do we do and how do we make sure that we're prepared going forward? And that in part means maybe having at least a partially remote work environment.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned even like the offices, collapsing, the office to be smaller or not having as big of a actual office, which also reduces your lease costs, right? You're paying less for your practice to be run. I think we have Laura O'Brien coming up, and she does about virtual law firms and stuff, and she always talks about how that that's a big part of theirs is we have 0% of our money goes to lease space and stuff, and she goes the amount of savings we can pass on also buffering your margins at the same time. It'd be interesting to see law firms coming and kind of realizing that's a decent chunk of many law firms' budgets is their office space.
Right, and I think part of this also is helping people realize that you can think a little bit more creatively as to how you operate your workspace. So this is a great opportunity to think about. Maybe you don't need that full suite of offices, but something like a Regus or a Da Vinci or a WeWork will be a better fit for your firm, where you need space to go meet with clients, to meet with colleagues, but maybe you just don't need as much space or as permanent space. So it's an opportunity to think differently about how you actually use that space or find it.
Right. So thinking about these things, so people being first virtual, looking at technology changes, what are some of the maybe long-term effects that you think we're going to see in the delivery of legal services?
Good question. And I think we're probably still too early to see really, I mean, I know through Twitter and different social media platforms, you can see all kinds of thoughts on what that looks like. But at this point, I don't think we really know exactly what the effect will be. Obviously, there's the aspect of how people engage with their law firm. So, for example, if law firms are working remote, that means their clients are also likely working remote, and they're going to be more apt to engage in Zoom and phone versus that need for in-person. I think one of the main things that's going to have to come out of this is just a change in how courts operate. I mean, we're seeing that already, where hearings, and I read an article yesterday, I think in Texas, where jurors were being interviewed over Zoom. So I think that's that infrastructure is going to be the part that the court infrastructure is going to be one of the main issues that has to change over time, because we're just being forced into working differently.
Yeah, it's interesting we say that, because I almost wonder there's trends that maybe were happening that this is accelerating, rather than a lot of people saying it's the new normal. It's I think it was already starting to become a normal. Legal was just very behind, especially maybe with courts. They couldn't even do things because of the courts, right? Right. So I would argue that a lot of consumers were not preferring to drive downtown, pay for parking, and go into their law firm to meet with somebody in person, right? It's just something that's just the way you did things, so you did it. Or courts and jurors and all these different wet signatures, all these things that just the states required. I think now that starts opening, there's a whole set of trends that I think have been pushing this way. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think and I think what you identified as kind of the key issue is that those underlying rules where, when we're talking about future of legal services, we're often talking about things like non-lawyer ownership and, big picture rule changes. But what we're seeing as a result, I think, is that the local rules and the local operations are perhaps even more important to that change, because if, local courts aren't changing the way they operate, then we could have all the major, non-lawyer ownership type issues change at the highest levels. But if those state and local, rules aren't changing and evolving, then the ability for the consumer to have a different way of engaging with legal services. So, for example, like, I think actually a great example, Hello Divorce. Aaron Levine is in the Bay Area and has got this great concept for how to streamline the divorce process. Well, as long as the local rules and procedures remain the same, she's streamlining the cost of it on the preparation of it, but you still have to go through the process. And so the opportunity to change that underlying process will make concepts like hers thrive even more than they already have been.
Right, and it's interesting, right? Because it seems that changing those processes is kind of catching up to the way everybody does every other part of their life other than legal. Like we've been teledocs and like all the medical technology to have portals and stuff. I mean, like that's been there for a while, and that's always pointed to as one of the dinosaurs of for consumers to deal with. Yep. So yeah, I mean, we had a client that had to go to extremes in order to put on masks and have pens and clipboards that they gave to people as they drove through to do, because they had to have the wet signature on their documents for estate plans, right? Yep. And a lot of people were, when this all started, like that became an area where people were like, maybe I do need my estate work done a little bit. I haven't touched that in a while. And but to have to like put everybody at risk in that situation because of, like you said, like a local law, state level law or something like that. And I think we saw some of those change pretty quickly, but there's probably a lot more that can be chipped away.
Right. Absolutely. So, I mean, and it almost goes to county by county depending upon how the state operates.
Yeah.
So
true. So switching gears a little bit, talking about technology, right? Because you guys help a lot of firms and, like I said, bar associations, all kinds of people, like with maybe design thinking, strategy, and implementation of technology. One of the things we've always talked about. And I just lost your video, Chad, but we'll get it back here.
I'm back.
So one of the things that we've talked about is like it's always good to plan before you just throw some technology up or whatever, right? But we've had a whole bunch of people who had to just throw technology up. Is now still a good time to be adopting new technology?
It depends. I mean, it requires a lawyer answer depending upon the firm. I think what we have found with a lot of firms that they actually already have the technology that they need. They just weren't using it to its full potential. So I know a lot of firms are looking at what they already have and saying, okay, is it going to solve the problems that we have either before the pandemic or in light of being remote? And so that's the best starting point, is what you already have. But at the same time, firms are adopting new tech, and whether it's something that was in the pipeline already or they're seeing the warts in their systems as a result of being remote and having to be more efficient with processes. And it's been a great time, especially during the beginning of this, when firms were slower and the phone wasn't ringing as much with leads. It was a great time, and it still was a great time, for firms to be working on their operational infrastructure to make it stronger. So that's been, especially when firms have had less work, or because the courts shut down, all of a sudden everything that they had in the pipeline just was halted. They've used this time to build a strong infrastructure so that when things become normal, or whatever that means, when they're operating at a higher capacity, then they're ready to go. And these are checking things off of people's to-do lists that have been there for months or even years at this point. So it's been a great reset opportunity for folks.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think I've seen similar where it's hey, I have time now. What should I be working on? So a lot of those conversations. But your point about if you already have some technology in place, like look there first. Just because somebody on Twitter said this is the best new shiny object, sometimes like I've talked to somebody like, well, should I be implementing Slack? And I hear all about Slack, and then you find out that they're with Office 365 already. They use like it really well. It's like, well, you already have a solution you're paying for. So like stepping back and looking at taking inventory of what you have, I think is great advice because a lot of people get caught up in that kind of shiny object.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Office 365, or if you're a G Suite, a Google user, I mean, that's a great place to start because one, they've got the tools that, people aren't using it to its full potential and don't think about Microsoft Teams or, I mean, we're using Zoom like everyone else in the world, including, my 12-year-old who wanted a Zoom account. And, but if you have 365 and you can use Skype, Google, I feel like they change the name every other week, but I think it's Google Meet currently, has been trying to catch up with Zoom on some features recently. So that's a great tool. It's already built into your infrastructure. And so using those tools that are there are huge. You don't have to always go outside of what you already have.
So on the tech side, let's think about because I want to get to talk about what you're seeing in terms of like leads and stuff in a second. But let's start with we've gone through like the technology and we talked about practice management, some of those kind of things, right? You've talked about Clio in the past, and but let's talk the intake, right? It's like that's an area that I've said that there's a lot of issues we see issues with that's one area where people spend a lot on marketing, spend a lot on this technology, but then they kind of miss this middle piece that actually is the intersection of all of it, right? So what are any recommendations you have on how to best optimize intake?
Oh, we have 3 hours on the rest of this?
In the next 3 minutes, Chad, just help people with intake.
The best thing to do would be to start again with your systems that are there and figure out how you're going to measure and track data related to intake. Because one of the things that, from an intake perspective is if you can optimize intake, you're going to fix your firm. You are going to be able to make sure that you're getting the right types of leads and the right types of clients in the door, which is especially important now when you are figuring out what does your firm look like going forward. So intake is one of those key areas where you give it the attention that it needs, both from the tech side to figure out, okay, what do I need to measure? What data do I need to gather so we can really make intelligent decisions about how we spend our marketing dollars? But it's also got a human component too, to make sure that your team is properly dedicated to it. One of the things that often happens with firms is that you have a person who is your intake person, and they're also doing 5,000 other jobs. So when they're trying to talk with a potential client, then they're also trying to answer emails and greet people coming in the door. I know it's a little different now, but the phone keeps ringing. And so they see, they just aren't able to kind of really focus on that. So focusing on the human component to it, as well as kind of the structural systems and processes in that tech, those are the things you need to look at from optimizing your intake system. Yeah,
and that human element, I think that's so critical. I mean, you can't just point to the one paralegal or admin that you have who you have doing other work for your firm and say you're in charge of answering every single phone and getting our clients converted or marketing dollars converted, right? So knowing that somebody's gets all this investment in training and then they're dealing with client issues for half the day, they can't even answer the phone that's an issue, right? So these are those the human process things, right? And I like that idea of getting everybody on board for here's what our process is going to be for our intake because it's so critical. and like maybe I guess having failovers and other people who know that when the phone rings, it's important to answer it, or when
Right.
when a lead comes in, it's important to follow up with it in any way. Right?
Yep. I mean, a lot of firms, and I think this is, well, it's still happening with firms, but it's getting even worse, where you've got the person who is in charge of intake. They've got a piece of paper. It's often like blue or red, or it's got a special color to have some significance. They write down that information, and when everybody's in the office, it would go in filing cabinet. Now it's sitting on somebody's kitchen table, effectively, the intake person at their house. And that data and that information just doesn't get shared in an effective way. So making sure that you've got that centralized system is huge.
Awesome. So we are running out of time on our Facebook show here, but I got more questions and that I didn't get to. If you'd stick around, we can actually I asked you a few more questions. We could put it on our YouTube channel on Friday if you're cool with that.
Cool. Sounds good.
Awesome. Okay. But before I cut here, how can people get a hold of you?
One way is on Twitter. Chad E. Burton is one way to do it. Email is chad@modernlawpractice.com. So those are two easy ways to get a hold of me.
Awesome. And then we'll make sure we get that in the notes here. All right. Thanks, Chad. Just hold on one second, and I'll be right back. So thanks for joining us today. Be sure to like and subscribe to our page so you'll get notified when our next episode goes live. We're going to keep going here in the GNGF studios, so be sure to check out the extended interview with Chad that'll drop on Friday, where we dive into maybe like what practice areas will need to change the way they operate, and we'll get into some more information about leads. All right, thanks for sticking with us, Chad. So I did want to dive into we talked about intake, but I want to talk about the lead side. Are you seeing any progress on increase in new leads or anything with clients? I know that's something we saw for our clients across the board, kind of like leads dropping down. But what are we on increasing leads and getting new clients?
Yeah, I think they're definitely trending up. I think March was pretty abysmal for a lot of firms, but April and May. I'm sorry. What month is it? Let me get that right. That's a great sign of, it's year 2050 at this point. Is that where we are? I think part of April, let me get that right. Yeah, part of April, people were struggling, but especially second half of April and first part of May, people have been seeing increased, if they're increased leads, if they're putting that effort out. A lot of what we've seen in firms that are doing well now, or at least maintaining where they were, is that if they've really stepped back and recalibrated how they are reaching potential clients. And so we've seen lots of interesting and creative ways that firms haven't acted before. Engaging in social media. We're doing the Facebook Live aspect of things here, where we've got clients who have never even thought about it, but are now hosting shows every night at 7:00 that are on their practice area topic, and it's driving insane amounts of work because it's creative and different, and they're going to where everyone is living in this pandemic world, which is on social media. People are looking at making sure they're still spending marketing dollars on paid Google to drive that traffic. So I think that those who are really engaging with this and thinking through it, and not just leveraging this time for some time off, are seeing increased leads and doing well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the idea of if you're marketing is an investment. If you continue investing, it will be a payoff. But if you stop, right, it's like that much longer to kind of get started. But I would say our data matches very similar. It's interesting you mentioned the social media. We saw that we had an increase in traffic to law firm websites from social media and stuff by 70%. Not 70% of the traffic, but an increase of 70% from normal. From kind of normal times, right? And actually a decrease in Google search by 15, 18% or something. So yeah, I mean it's moving that stuff to social media. I'll be curious, and we'll have to talk about this maybe in about 6-7 months looking back. But does that come back, down or did Facebook win out of this a little bit in terms of, like mind share and traffic? So that'll be interesting.
Yeah, it will be. And the key is just that people are trying different things. I mean, at this point, and trying to be creative and not just sitting back and hoping that, the phone starts ringing again, or people start reaching out.
Yeah, and I think the ones that are trying to be creative and stuff are seeing some leads. Like our clients are still, have leads. It's just less than maybe it was before, beginning of March. But they're coming back. We're seeing it trend the right direction now as well. But I still, get on. I mean, you get on a lot of the same webinars and stuff where I talk to people who said I haven't had the phone ring in 5 weeks, and it's like, well, what are you doing? And it's like, well, what do you mean? What am I doing? I'm not doing anything different than I used to do. But what I used to do was go to networking events in person, and that's about it. So.
Right. And that is, and I mean, even with that aspect of it, it's, you can't go to the networking events, but you got to think about, different ways of reaching those same people, because they're still going to have referrals, and you need to remain top of mind for them. And so that's where you see people doing absurd amounts of, Zoom happy hours and coffees and things to keep that networking piece going. So, you just have to do it differently now.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like pick up the email list again, and you haven't sent a newsletter to in a while, and maybe reach out to that referral network again, right? Yeah, there's all kinds of ways. So, but yeah, just be creative, I think. So, have you thought about are there any practice areas you think that out of this are going to really need to change the way they operate?
Criminal defense seems one that's top of mind, where the way that with the courts shutting down, and that just ground a lot of people's practices to a halt, because all of a sudden, if you're used to doing, DUIs, DWIs, and all of a sudden the courts aren't open and police aren't arresting people because they're not driving, that's your ball game there. So that's where we've seen, firms be able to step back and say, okay, what is it that is the best way to approach this and reach people? Because if the court shut down, then and that was your bread and butter, you're going to have to expand out elsewhere. So I think criminal defense is one where people just have to be ready for the ebbs and flows of courts. Now, going back to our conversation during the live portion of this, where the infrastructure of courts changing so that they can still process cases will be helpful, especially for those cases that already exist pre shutdown times. So I think that's one area that's going to be real interesting to figure out how to thrive in that, especially as if we have situations where the country shuts down again because of spikes in the pandemic. That's very possible to happen, so people have to be prepared for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because specific to that one, I mean, between like traffic tickets and maybe DUIs, another one, like those tend to be volume kind of practices, right? Like, it's low margin, very high volume. You're getting someone in, you're going to the court, you're taking care of a bunch of things at once. If courts hold you up, then you've reduced your volume, and if you're not getting the inbound, I mean, that is one area I would agree. From our data, had probably the biggest hit. Criminal was by far the biggest practice area hit in terms of like reduction in leads, but they got, like you said, the double whammy. I mean, both sides, less leads and courts impacting them. So now, are you suggesting that people look at new ways to approach, or literally look and say, what am I really good at in DUI? How do I apply that to other practice areas?
It's probably going to be both. I mean, there's I know some criminal defense lawyers are looking at effectively like a legal coaching model, where especially if for family members that need help, with guiding, maybe it's the person that's been charged is struggling with pick an issue that family want to help out and need some coaching on that. So I've seen that. But yeah, I think you're going to have to think about one, new ways to approach it, but also, are there other areas that you need to dive into that are more pandemic proof? that will keep going throughout, even if the court's shut down.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a good thought to leave things on here, because it basically, apply kind of like what you like and what you're good at, and look at maybe new models of doing things, just in case, if nothing else, right, as a thought exercise.
It's not a bad thing to think about, especially because we've got a real world situation where granted, different people prepared in different ways, but a lot of states shut down quickly, and the immediate impact wasn't going to be obvious for folks out of the gate. So this concept of being able to be flexible, but also now having that knowledge, we can think ahead and plan better. Now is the time to think, okay, what do I want my practice to look like? One, when things kind of become, relatively normal and cases pick up, but two, what do I need to do now from a practice area and infrastructure perspective to prep my firm when things hit the fan again? And I think it's fair that that's probably going to happen in some, maybe not as big of a splash, but it's going to be something that we have to be prepared for.
Kind of sounds like my, elementary school teachers now, coming back in, it's like, prepare for the worst, but hope for the best kind of thing. But that's where we're at. So thanks so much, Chad.
That's where we are.
We're going to leave it on that. And thanks for joining us again. And again, we'll, for those who maybe skipped the live portion for the extended interview, again, where can people find you?
On Twitter at Chad E. Burton, or email is chad@modernlawpractice.com.
Awesome. Thanks. Well, have a great day, Chad.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, what's up? I'm Josh. Thanks so much for joining us. If you feel like you learned something today, think of how beneficial it would be to chat with myself or another one of our marketing consultants one-on-one. Go ahead and visit our website to schedule your free consultation. It only takes a minute.